The king of pop and the king of rock and roll have some of the biggest and most loyal fan bases, especially for legacy artists. It's 2025, and both the brands of Elvis and Michael Jackson are growing bigger than ever. And there are a lot of commonalities between the two fan bases. So today I wanted to invite some special guests on, Kristen and Benita from Those Elvis Girls. And we're super excited to be talking about our favorite two people, Elvis and Michael Jackson, today. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
we're excited.
I'm super excited to have you both on. I have talked about this a little bit on my channel, which is a Michael Jackson channel. But I've mentioned to my viewers how I've like fallen down the Elvis rabbit hole recently. And I've been like so like obsessed with like looking everything up and learning. And one of your podcasts came up, and like I've been watching all your episodes. So I love hearing about the Elvis fan base through you guys.
Thank you so much. Well, that's how it happens. I feel like probably the same for you with Michael Jackson. Like once you start going down that rabbit hole, you just want to know every single piece of information, history. And I know you're like a music historian, like we call ourselves. So we want to know every detail that we can. So the rabbit hole is real and we fell down it. Hence why we have a YouTube channel about Elvis, because we can't be stopped. We want to know more and share more. And yeah, I love that.
Those Elvis girls are made up of Kristen, Benita, and Margarita, and they are content creators, historians, and massive Elvis Presley fans. They have a podcast-style channel called Those Elvis Girls, and it's here on YouTube. They started in 2023, and they frequently interview a lot of people from Elvis's life and people who knew him best, fellow fans, and also tribute artists, which I recently found out from your channel. They have a special acronym, right?
They do.
Yes.
They do.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
ETA. So there's levels to it. There's like the impersonators who are like the creepy ones that you see walking up and down the Vegas Strip, right? And they're like $5 for a picture. And you're just like, ew, get away from me. But then there's actually these amazing, talented artists who are trained and they sing and can put on a show that makes you feel like you were transported back into time watching Elvis in real life. And, you know, just that charisma, like some of these guys are getting really close, you know.
We actually interviewed, we have some friends in the ETA community. We interviewed one, and then we actually have another episode with another up and coming ETA as well. And just the dedication that they put into, it's more about Elvis's legacy. They train their whole lives to be able to do right by him and perform. And so, yes, that is a whole side of the Elvis community that I think people think is weird until you become a fan. And then you're like, okay, well, Elvis isn't here anymore. And they give us like a little taste of what it would be if Elvis was alive and we were seeing him perform. So we love them. And yeah, it's fun.
I think
it's a fun side.
I think that's similar. Like Michael Jackson, there's a Broadway show, and the actor, I forgot his name, but I follow him on Instagram, and
Miles Frost.
Yes, Miles Frost. So I don't know if you saw that show, but I want to see it eventually. I don't know if
it's so good. Like the Michael Jackson Broadway show. I've seen it one time, but they have recently expanded it. They have it in the West End in London. It's still on Broadway in New York. They have a traveling version of the show. And now they're starting in Australia, which is like, it's wild.
We got to go see that, Kristen. Like,
I know. Okay, let's go to London, you said, because there's an Elvis show. I feel like I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but there's a new Elvis show coming to London. So we could do both. We could go to the Elvis show and then we can go to the Michael Jackson show all together. Sign us up.
Well, now that we're on that, let's talk about the posthumous projects, because one of the things in the Michael Jackson community that I feel like a lot of fans tend to do is compare ourselves to other like fan estates of legacy artists. Oh, the Prince estate did this and the Elvis estate does this. And I wanted to hear from people who are actually in the fan base. What kinds of projects have you guys had? I want to start out just a little bit by giving a little bit of background about what the Michael Jackson estate has done. There was an influx of projects like when Michael Jackson passed away in 2009. So between like 2009 and 2012, there was a video game. There were like releases celebrating anniversary of albums like the Bad album, Bad 25. They had DVDs, documentaries, all sorts of things, re-releases of concerts on DVD that had never been released before. They had a Cirque du Soleil show, one that was touring and then one that is in Vegas still. It seems like a lot of fans, at least in the MJ community, want more and more. And so I wanted to like I wanted to have you ladies talk a little bit about like what the Elvis estate has done, and what are some of the projects that are out that fans have been excited about?
I think it's similar. I mean, well, and unfortunately, like Elvis has been dead a lot longer than Michael Jackson. So since his death, like in 1977, I think it did start out with like a lot of like the re-releases for the albums, re-releases for documentaries, but a lot of like modern day type content that is coming out for Elvis. And what has like actually brought me here, I'm actually a newer fan than Benita. Benita is a lifelong fan. I was brought here. I've been a fan of rock and roll music my whole life, but they recently came out with a new biopic that starred Austin Butler, and it was called Elvis. It was directed by Baz Luhrmann in 2022. And I think that movie, brought in a whole new type of fan base for Elvis because it was bringing like, Hollywood stardom, famous people right to the forefront to like, for the first time ever. I knew about Elvis. Everybody knows about Elvis, right? But do you really know who he was as a person? I did not. I was like, Elvis Presley, I don't know. I don't know. Isn't he just like that old person who sings like 70s music and is like very dated? No. I saw that movie and I was just like shook to my core about just all of like just his life and what he did and like so that type of content, like there's movies coming out. That was the first one, which spawned, it was so successful. It spawned like Aisha, we were talking about the Priscilla movie, which came out like another year later. And of course, there is like a divide between like older fans and newer fans and what we want to see versus like what some of the OG fans from like back in the day want to see. But there's always like new projects coming out about Elvis just because his life, there's so much like there's so many photos and videos and things that were like recorded that haven't even been released yet. And so aside from the movies, there is talks of like new documentaries coming out, unreleased videos that were recorded of like concerts. And like for us, that actually means a ton to us because, when you think about someone's life in general, you think about like limited content, like, well, Elvis isn't here anymore. So there's no more new videos of him. Like we probably have seen it all, but it's actually not true. It's like there's so much in his archives that has not been shared to the public yet. And like the new rumors are coming out that there will be some new documentaries coming out with like never before seen footage of some of his later shows in the 70s. And like, I don't want to speak for Benita, but I feel like that's the type of stuff that we like live for because it's like, that is the real Elvis. It's not like a character playing him or an actor playing him. We want any type of image or video that we can get of him. So working on that, we don't know any dates or anything like when that's coming out, but we're always following like the news of when the documentaries are going to be released. And that's actually Baz Luhrmann, who did the movie, is the one that is going to be working on that documentary. And then I feel like over the last couple years, there were so many Netflix documentaries that came out like all around the same time because I feel like they kind of were like riding the wave of the Elvis, like success of the Elvis movie. They were focusing on like documentaries. They did one on his 68 comeback special, which is just like one of his more popular shows.
I watched
I'm sure
that.
you've seen. Yes. Watch the original and then like watch the documentaries. And we can never get enough of it. I mean, people that do the documentaries, there's always like a new perspective or a new, I don't know, like new facts that they share, but we always want more from that stuff. So we're big into the history, we're big into the facts. And I think like I lean more towards like, I want the documentaries. I want the real footage. I want like the unseen footage. Benita, what else did I miss? I don't know. Like what else? There's so much stuff out there.
Well, yeah, I think you hit a lot of good topics as far as, the album releases, the movie, which reunited a whole new fan base and existing fan base right here. Isn't it crazy how music and movies can kind of just bring you in? And I think Michael Jackson and Elvis, they really share this aspect on how to just, I don't know, engage these fans that are so loyal. But I think another part of it is like the trust, Graceland, and like how that property has been, a historic landmark for so many years. And there's a lot going on with that ever since Lisa Marie had passed away. Now Riley Keough, her daughter, is now the sole trustee of that property. And then what's really exciting, because she's a new young generation and she has, a lot of ties in Hollywood and entertainment. So one thing that we got last Christmas, 2024, Christmas. We
I
had
forgot about this.
Christmas at
Yeah.
Graceland, where the first time ever they invited other performers to perform at Graceland. We had Casey Musgraves. We had Post Malone, who jumped in the swimming pool after his performance. There was
Dream.
even
Lana Del Rey,
and
Alanis Morissette. Yeah.
yeah, and we had country, we had rock and roll. It's just so exciting because it really just, these artists were all inspired by Elvis at one point and have been documented. Like Lana Del Rey, she, almost every song you can relate back to Elvis, you know, like that's the love of her life or whatever. I don't know, this like that fandom romanticizing angle. And then even in her hair and makeup, it's very much Priscilla, like, you know, like
Yeah.
the eyeliner. So these artists are all kind of influenced in one way or another by Elvis. And so it's just, it was nice to have that new approach. And I think they're even bringing some new adventures at Graceland, like they're doing more personal horse tours. And like, so that's just really exciting because we have this new person, you know, running the brand in the business.
For us, all the projects, a lot of the projects are they stem from like us traveling and going to Memphis, going to Graceland, and like the museum that's there literally houses all of Elvis's artifacts in his archives. So they're always like doing new exhibits and changing out. There's like a huge jumpsuit room where right now there's like 100 of Elvis's jumpsuits on display from the 70s, but they're constantly like changing and updating that as well. And so like there's always a reason to go back to Memphis and go back to Graceland just to see like what else is out there. So that's a huge part of like our fandom, is going to look at the artifacts, being in the museums. And that project, hopefully, you know, it's always there because that's huge for us too.
So that brings me to Graceland, because that is something that we do not have in the Michael Jackson fan community. I want to just give a little bit of background. So for those listening, Graceland is, well, I should let you ladies really do it. Graceland is where Elvis lived, right? It was like one of his first homes when he got successful.
Correct. Yes.
And he passed away years later. Priscilla opened it as a museum, right? Was it in the 80s?
In the 80s, yes. In 1985, Benita, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the first year it opened to the public. But the interesting thing about that, maybe, don't quote me on that. I think it's like around there. It's in the mid 80s. But Elvis's family, part of his family, because he always had a house, he always housed his like aunts, his uncles, people that worked for him, lived on his property. His parents lived, his mom passed away in the 50s, but like his dad lived with him, cousins, like he always had a rotating, you know, just people who lived in Graceland. And actually when they opened Graceland to the public, Elvis's aunt Delta still lived on the property. So you would be able to take a tour, and like his aunt was just like in her bedroom, and people were like, wow. I know. Isn't it weird? I know. I'm like, that's so strange.
Intimate for a fan to be able to experience, right?
You know. So Graceland is kind of like we all like, we just want to be there. It was Elvis's like one of his first huge purchases when he hit big with Heartbreak Hotel. He bought Graceland for his family and for his parents, and basically like, you know, he pulled them out of poverty, and like from them in Mississippi, for them like going from like house to house and then finally having a real home base at Graceland. It was just like huge for us. So it means a lot to like all of us for sure.
It's kind of been built out, right? Because now, so from what I've seen online, it's still his home, and it's been restored to like how it looked in the 60s, right? And you can kind of go not into the rooms, but observe, kind of like go through what a lot of the rooms look like, except for the bedroom.
Correct.
Upstairs. Mm-hmm.
So what are the events and what kinds of things happen throughout the year at Graceland that bring fans together? Or like what are some of the times, the big times that people go out there? Because I assume they do year-round tours and stuff like that. Okay.
I think you're onto something, because Elvis, from what I know, is one of the only entertainers that fans do this for. And I don't know about this for Michael Jackson. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But every single year, like twice a year for sure, they do birthday week, which is August 8th to 16th. So that's like around the time that he died, August 16th. But
depends on like where it falls, like in the week. But yeah, it's always like around the 16th of his death day, unfortunately. Sad. It's morbid, but we're there.
Yeah, but they do a really good job of bringing in entertainers and guests, like Linda Thompson sometimes. Like Priscilla used to come every year until recently, the past couple years, and then Linda came. That was awkward. because yeah, she was like the one organizing and is basically the one that opened up Graceland for tours, because they were facing like financial struggles, and everyone advised her to sell Graceland, and she's like, no, 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 no. And so that's when it became open for tours. And so I think a fan, like one of the fans, lined up and did like a candlelight vigil in honor of his death, and then just became a thing. And that's been happening for over 40 something years. I got to experience that twice now, and it's just so crazy, Aisha. Fans from all over the world, UK, London, Germany, Brazil, Portugal, like it's just massive. But they do that every year.
That's amazing. So Michael Jackson lived at Neverland during the majority of his adult life. I wouldn't say, I can't even say the majority, but for many years of his adult life, Neverland was like the place that he purchased and like made into his own. Yeah. Previously to that, he lived in the Havenhurst compound, which was the Jackson family home. Okay. That's where the Jacksons all that's where they all lived when they became famous after the Jackson 5. And he lived there all the way up until he finished the Bad album, actually. Really, really not until the 90s was really when Neverland became his home. But Neverland is very, very like in a far off place because, he wanted to be kind of secluded, have his own, make his own world. Because in a similar fashion to Elvis, he was the fans and people, paparazzi, all of that. It was just too much for him. So he really put his house so far out there that the zoning laws don't even allow for them to make this like an attraction. Because you have to drive up this little like road to get up to this far off mountainous area. And the estate has said that they cannot make it into a museum. And so they think that maybe they can make the Jackson's Havenhurst complex a museum, but it hasn't been used that way so far. Right now, it's just used for family functions, and Prince Jackson, who is Michael's son, uses it for his charity. They do like charity galas and events, and I've been fortunate to attend some of those. But we don't really have a gathering spot. Usually in June when Michael died, the death anniversary, we go to the cemetery where he's buried. Okay. And then in August,
that's in LA, right?
Yes, in LA, in Forest Lawn.
That one's really popular because Marilyn Monroe is also buried there. There's like a lot of big people. I've never been, but it's on my list.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so nice. And when you go up to like the mausoleum, they have a door and like fans leave like beautiful bouquets and gifts, and it's nice. But it's like to hear that you guys have a spot where you can go not only to see where Elvis lived so much of his life, but also to see the collection. I know. Like I heard they have like 10, I think I forgot the amount. Is it like 10,000 items or something like that in the museum?
I feel like if you count like all the papers and things like that, like there's millions. Like, I don't think they're all on display. They have like a whole archive with hidden things that like they're not on display, but they bring them out sometimes. Aisha, I was going to ask you, what about his like birth house in Indiana? Do you guys ever get to go there, or is it kind of like in Gary, Indiana?
No, it's.
Oh, where is it? Okay.
Sorry. Yes, it is in Gary, Indiana. Okay. But actually, I personally have never been. However, they don't really do fan gatherings or anything there. I think from what I've heard, gotcha. The situation in Gary is not like the best when in terms of like the crime rate and all that stuff. Yeah. But they did just open a Hard Rock hotel in Gary that the Jacksons have performed at, and they have like a massive Jacksons display. The problem though is that there are Michael Jackson fans, and then there are Michael Jackson fans that also love the Jacksons. Yeah. Some MJ fans are like just about Michael, and they don't want to see anything about like his years as a child star or with his family.
Interesting. Okay.
That is interesting.
Because like that's part of his history. It's like, he
was a child star.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. And I'm like, I want to know everything, but there's some that are like, nah, we'll just take like from Don't Stop to Get Enough on.
Yeah.
Yes,
We have that
exactly.
too. Trust me, we have that too. Like, I mean, we can go into it, but like, I don't know if you guys care about like Michael Jackson's ex's history or his like relationship history, but I mean, in our
Yes.
fandom, people get into that, and then people like, there's always just like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's an interesting dynamic of, we support this person and I don't care about this person. I don't care about, I don't know. It's just, but like on our channel, we're just like, any detail is like, we want it. We don't choose sides. We just choose Elvis, and then anything around him is like important to us. So yeah, but we have that too. We have there's different aspects, different levels of fandoms, I guess.
I love that. And that's what I love about your channel is that it feels like, I can just come there to learn and like listen and take information in as opposed to like be swayed to one side or the other, which I love like that historian angle. And you ladies actually inspired me to take a more historic angle on my channel because
I love that.
yeah, I'm like in 2025, this is my historian era. I'm going to try to teach people things because I feel like there's a lack of that when it comes to like these fandoms that are so strong. People are like, no, I'm, like, especially with the Michael estate. We have like the estate, which people don't really like the estate.
Yep.
And then they're like, they're on the family side. And then they're like, there are people that are like, I don't care. Just give me the concert footage. I don't care how it gets to me. But we were talking about this before we started recording about Priscilla, right? Because Priscilla, is she in charge of the estate or how does that work?
Well, you know what? Actually don't. So I don't know if you follow like if there's like always news coming out about like Michael's estate, but I swear to goodness, even 47 years after Elvis's death, there is still like weekly updates about like who controls Elvis's estate. And like, unfortunately, Lisa Marie Presley just died, and she was kind of like not only like the head of like she was running Graceland, and she had kind of like overall say towards like what happened and like what projects, and she had input into like the movies and the documentaries coming out, and people really did feel like she was one of the last like connections to Elvis that really cared about like how he was portrayed in like modern day media and things like that. And like with her passing, there has been a lot of legal things going on with like who owns what. And unfortunately, and this is like what was the sad part about it, is like, even though he has still died, people still like want a piece of him, that like we're not even part of anything. Like I can't, what's his name? Benita. It's like one of Lisa's like ex husbands, like felt like he had a stake in part of Elvis's like money. And there's always just like, they're still battling, even all these years later about his estate. So I forget what the main, Priscilla. Yeah. I think she's kind of like out, she's kind of stepping back, and letting Riley, Lisa's daughter, Priscilla's granddaughter, Elvis's granddaughter, kind of like run it. But that also is like a different dynamic as well, because Riley, she was born after Elvis died. So she actually never knew of like she never met Elvis. She didn't know Elvis personally. She only knew of him through like what she heard from her family. So we all have like really big hopes for like what she does with the estate. And as Benita talked about, like the Christmas special, like there's some really new, innovative, modern day things coming out with like that are her ideas. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to like see where she kind of like takes it. But yeah, I think Priscilla's stepping back a little bit and like letting Riley kind of take the lead, which I think most people are generally like happy with that for sure.
I'm actually excited to hear that because and we can get into Riley next because I want to talk to you guys about Lisa Marie's book. Lisa Marie, as people know, if they know anything about Elvis and Lisa Marie or Michael Jackson, they're tied together through the fact that Michael Jackson married Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie. And they were married from 1994 to 1996, which is so cool. And they seem to have such a like fun-loving relationship and like all the pictures and everything. And Lisa Marie revealed some details in her book about it. So let's talk about Lisa Marie. And also, you guys told me there's a little like nod to Michael at Graceland, right? So for the Michael fans listening that might want to visit Graceland one day.
Yeah, I think I sent you that photo. And Benita, you probably know. I sent Aisha the photo of where when Michael and Lisa were married, Michael carved his initials into that tree by the pool with like a heart with, I think it says like M and L, and then there's like a heart and an arrow through it. And so it has obviously grown over like since then, but you can still kind of like make out the details. And yeah, that carving is still visible when you go tour Graceland. You could see the tree, you could see where Michael carved it, which I just think is like so cool. Like that's another part of Graceland and Elvis history. So I wanted to send that to you because I'm like, yes, I knew you would like love it. But
yes, and I've already been wanting to go to Graceland since I've been watching your videos and hearing about Elvis Week and all that. And now I'm like, I really need to go because Michael's got there's a little bit of Michael there too.
Yeah.
Tell me about Lisa Marie, her book. Did you ladies read it?
Yeah.
I can share like what I remember. Michael had like a certain way of going about things because he was used to being a star for so long, and in some ways that like pulled them together because they both could understand that, like because her father had been through that too, where they just had like people around them, a lot of yes people, whatever.
Yep.
And I think in the beginning it was a way that they became close, but then it kind of drove them apart at the same time because Michael wanted her to do certain things or be okay with certain things, and she's like, no, that's not gonna fly. And it was interesting because for me as a fan, like it kind of humanized Michael, because usually in the fan community we tend to, like, at least in Michael's community, we tend to glorify, oh, he was a perfect angel, da, 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 da. And I don't know if that's like that in the Elvis community too sometimes.
It is in a way. Yep. And some people refuse to like I mean, I think we on our channel, we understand this. Like, we know that Elvis was human. We know that he always didn't make the best choices, and he made a lot of very bad choices that, we don't even agree with, but it's still part of his history. And like, he is a human being, and we know, like, we can see that without being like, he's perfect, he's like God, he's Jesus, like all, we see his human side, and like, that's just part of like his life. And so I was going to ask you about that. I'm like, do you have fans that are just like, Michael can do no wrong? And because we have that, but we see the human side. You have to acknowledge it, especially as like someone that does like history and research, like you have to accept parts of that. Yeah. Good or bad.
Yeah. I think we definitely have that in fan community, but there are a lot of fans too that are like very open and like, just, hey, we didn't agree with that, or that was not the best, or that was weird, or whatever. And we just take it as it is, like take it as the facts, and we digest it how we want. And we're not like opposed to like being not critical, but like just being open to the fact that like maybe we wouldn't have gone about things that way or whatever. And like, especially when it comes to like the Michael and the Lisa Marie thing, like me as a woman, and I'm reading that and I'm like, Michael, why did you do that to Lisa? Like, she was there for you. Like, she flew all the way to the VMAs to be there for you, and you made her do this kiss in front of everybody. You didn't even telling her. Like, like, I was just like, what? But it was interesting because as a Michael Jackson fan, especially, he was so good at kind of manipulating the things that are written about him in the media in a way, because I think he learned from artists that came before him. And he was just like, I'm going to craft my image in the media this way. And so we never, as Michael fans, we never really got to see how he was in a relationship or how he was as a friend, really, to anybody. Yeah. He kind of was very good at crafting what we saw. I loved Lisa Marie's book. I thought it was interesting. I loved how Riley has been coming out and saying like her memories of Michael are cool, like, and how her and Lisa would take them to school. And I'm like, Michael Jackson took somebody.
Can you imagine?
Like, what?
I want to know what he wore that day, because like Elvis used to like pick up Lisa from school, and I'm like, what were these men dressed like? Like, I just need to know what Michael wore to the school that day. Like some cool jacket or something.
The black shoes, the white socks, the tapered pants, the gloves,
hat,
or the tape. Like, was he wearing the tape?
That's so funny.
But no, I think as far as how I saw Michael, because I've been a fan of him way more than I think Elvis, just because at that time, Elvis, when I was younger, he wasn't as relevant. Like, I didn't talk to my friends about Elvis, because my aunt actually had stuff and she was older. And so my brothers and sisters were huge fans of Michael Jackson. I was the youngest one. And so we would nonstop play his music. We'd had his music videos. We had, we would know all the choreography, like Thriller, like, you know, like it was just such a big part of my childhood. And I don't think that, I know after he died, there was like stuff that came out, and I just chose not to even give that attention or time, because I know how I felt. I know how my childhood was kind of shaped by this entertainer, and that surpassed all the other things. But now that I'm older, I did see some of those interviews. Like, was it Oprah that was interviewing Lisa Marie and
Yeah.
Michael? And he's
Mhm.
just sitting there playing with her, and she looks
Oh,
gorgeous, by the way, like
Diane Sawyer.
stunning. Oh, is it Diane Sawyer?
When they were
Yes.
together, right? And he was like in a red shirt and Lisa was like all
Yeah.
defending him.
Yeah, and
That
just,
one.
you know, about their relation. She's like, "We have sex." You know, like, people don't think we have sex, or, you know, whatever it is, but it just, he's such a kid, you
I'm
know,
like
and she's
blushing because I'm like,
trying.
they made her like admit that on national television. Like, oh
Yeah.
God.
I
You know
know.
what I
I
mean?
know.
And he was just
Have
like, he didn't want to answer, and she was just like, yes. I love that.
Having to defend your relationship, you know, constantly, or whatever. But I remember the first time I saw Lisa Marie was in the Michael Jackson music video, and she just had like, her back was showing, and, you know, it was just,
Mm.
she was looking back, and I'm like, holy heck, who is this woman? She's so beautiful. And then I realized, like, oh, the king of rock and roll, or no, sorry, the daughter of the king of rock and roll and the king
Yeah,
of
it's like,
pop are married. I'm like, what the heck? Like, they had to do that just because. Like, why not do it? Even if they didn't get along, like, it's still so cool. And I don't know.
that was a salty,
I
that was like a little sultry little video too. I actually recently just rewatched it because I was like, I haven't seen this video in probably like 15 years. And I was like, ooh, oh my gosh, girl.
I
It's like her
know.
bare back. It's just like
She
I
looked
know.
good.
she looked good. Yeah, but I know why they got married. Like, I think she said it like in her book is that, I mean, Michael could relate to her on a level that I honestly feel like there's probably how many other people alive could really understand the life that she lived, the life that he lived, the life that Elvis lived. Like, that's why they were, I think, like, that's why they became together and that's why they bonded so early on. It's just because they had this like connection of just trying to exist in a world. And like, I don't really know about like how Michael kind of navigated like that the fandom, but like for Elvis, I mean, he was always so humble with his fans and he really did give so much of himself to like everybody, but it did take tolls on him. It took tolls on like their family, even Lisa Marie. Like, so her, even like her just navigating that in her life led her, like, I feel like she understood that Michael would also kind of like relate to that, just, you know, at that level of fame, you know, how many people can really understand, you know,
Yeah.
Michael is one of the
They
only
had that
ones,
in
you
common.
know?
They had that in common, so they were connected. They could, you know, just, it's different. It's like you're at the top of
Mhm.
this celebrity status, and then it's like, who else? You know what I mean? I don't know.
The flip side, it also probably took a toll on Michael. And I think that's why they ended up like separating, is because I think Lisa said in her book, like he kind of was like being, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Aisha, but like, you know, he was going down a wrong path just based on like trying to cope with like a lot of things. And like, for
Yeah.
as good as you are to the fans, like, and Elvis never figured this out. Like, he gave too much of himself, and like in the end, like, real, you know, he had a lot of health issues as well that he couldn't control, but there were so many
Mhm.
things that like he just let happen to him, and like we all of us wish like he would have just like take a year off, like, please, like, you know. And I think that was kind of, it led to his downfall, and I think, you know, you can see that in Michael as well, for better or for worse. So
I think Lisa Marie also mentioned that Michael knew about Elvis and he was afraid that he was gonna, I guess, go down the same path, um and he kind of, I mean, in a way, unfortunately, they both died way too young and before their time, and it's just sad because it's like, did it have to be this way? But then also, if you look at their stories, it's like what they went through made them who they are, you know? So it's hard to know, you
I
know,
know.
what could
We
have
play the
happened.
what if game. Do you play that too? This
Say
is, we call it, we're delusional. I mean, we know that we are delusional in so many ways, but we, in our fandom, we're always like, what if? Like, what if Elvis like lived to like make music in the 80s? Like, what would he wear? What would he look like? What would his music be like? And kind of like helps us cope, because we're like, you know, in 2025, Elvis would be 90. He could still physically be living. Like, people live to their 90s. Like, and that's what's hard about it, because like he could be here. I mean, he'd be old, he'd be in his
Yeah.
90s, but he could still be here, and he could have been making music this whole time. But you know,
I
would he have
think
lived this long? We don't know. I mean, it's hard to play, but it does help us cope a little bit to talk about the delusions. Yeah.
Michael fans, we do that too. Like, we're like, what if he would have, because when he passed, he was embarking on the This Is It tour. What if he would have done the tour? And we see his kids and we're like, oh man, like Michael would have been so proud. Or we wish, and I'm sure you guys go through that too, like seeing like, oh, we wish Lisa Marie had her father around for longer. And it seemed like, from reading her book, which all of you guys need to read, I'm going to link it right here. So you guys need to pick up Lisa Marie's book, whether you listen to it on an audiobook or you watch it, or you read it. It's really interesting because she talks so highly of Elvis and how not only how his being his daughter left an impact on her life, but like the loss of him left really a profound impact on her life, more than I had ever really known. And she talks about how her relationship with Priscilla was like a lot different than I think a lot of us knew, unless you're really close into that world. So it was very insightful and very interesting to learn about her. I wanted now to talk about the fandoms, because we've talked about like Graceland and how there's the place to go, and how Michael's play. We don't have a place to go yet. Hopefully that'll change. But I wanted to talk to you guys about the fandoms. Like, how do you meet new fans? Like, are there still the OG fans that are like, we're hanging outside the gates 30 years, 50 years ago? Like, what's the fandom like in the Elvis community?
Well, you have, from what I have gathered, you have the fans who actually went to Elvis's concerts, which is like years ago, and they're older, and they just have a different view. Like, they grew up in a different generation. There's the fans that collect everything from purses to vases to like their whole room is literally Elvis. So there's like that part of it. Where I've met a lot of fans is obviously the internet, because I grew up as an internet kid. So social media I've met Kristen, and we reached out through, social and whatnot. The Instagram fan account, I created that, and that opened up people messaging me because they saw that I liked posting, edits and different things of, about Elvis's life. And then I started visiting places, and then I found out other people like to visit places. And then that turned into, oh my gosh, should we meet up and go and see this place that he did a movie at? Or should we go to Vegas, where he recorded and, did a lot of his shows there? And then Graceland, and, the birthday week, the Elvis week. So easy to meet people once you're in the fandom, because people nonstop reach out to you and like, oh, hey, I have this story. And then I knew a guy who worked with Elvis, and I'm like, someone who worked with Elvis? Give me their contact information. Let's have them on the show. So it's just constantly like being, I guess, somewhat open to having people reach out to you. I do feel like there's some weirdos though. So I've found, but anyways,
I'm sure you're going to get those comments on that video, because they're going to be like, these young girls don't know what they're talking about with Elvis. And you're like, we do. We've read every book. We know. Like, I've been to Graceland 7 times this year. Like, I know. No, but like social media is big in the Elvis community these days. Like, Benita and I both have, which is so funny. It's like, it's a creative outlet for both of us. Like, we
exactly.
are, and I watch your Instagram too, Aisha. Like, we're always like making reels about Elvis or Michael Jackson, and like, I don't know, that's just like how we meet people. If you put yourself out there on the internet as like a fangirl, you meet others like you, or we have just a whole community out there on social media for Elvis and just constantly posting Elvis. And then that turned into meetups, and I hate to call it like a pilgrimage, but like there are so many spots, like even around the world, because Elvis lived in Germany for 2 years. I actually got to go to Germany like last year and go stay in his apartment that he lived in for 3 months. Like, I stayed for like a night or two. And so people from Europe like knew that I was going. So like they came over from like Prague. There's another German girl that came in England. And like, it is such a worldwide thing that like my friends that aren't in the community, it's hard to explain to them, like, because I call them like my real life friends and then my Elvis friends, because it's just they don't really mix, because Yeah, it's different. Like we're so nuanced. Like Benita can send me like the most random fact that, like, look at this thing that like Elvis did in 1969, and like we would die over it. But like my real life friends are like, who cares? And we're like, we care. So, you know, it is so
They're like,
worldwide. Yeah, so worldwide, and like we are always meeting people. And like I actually found Elvis through like a time in my life where I just felt like it's like right after the pandemic, and feel like we just felt like a little lost, and I feel like I really had like no inspiration. Like I was just working, staying at home. The world was like terrible, and like everything was just like going to shit after the pandemic. And the Elvis movie came out, and I swear to God, like I got like lights back in my eyes because I just was like so inspired by who he was as a person and his like music, which led me to like have all these friends, and like now you, and you know, you just meet, it has opened up like the world to us just by being a fan of Elvis in 2025. And I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know.
It does not sound crazy to me.
It's not, I don't think it's crazy. If anyone has seen like the Baz movie and understand that the way that, you know, the music and the way that they kind of showed his humble beginnings and then created this like the tragedy at the end, you know, just all of it, it just makes you as a more curious, genuinely just curious to learn more about him because it was just so fascinating. But back to the way that we interact with like the fandom, you guys. So someone messaged me and they're like, oh, you should interview this guy because he sent me a screenshot that he was friends with Elvis. And I'm like, okay, let me reach out to this person. I'll message him. And then he like responded back to me. And guys, guess who this person is? Drake's dad.
Who it is. Wait, I was like, do I know?
Drake. Okay, so Drake's dad. He's from Memphis.
Wait, are we going to interview him?
Drake the rapper?
I didn't know that. Yes, because Drake he's always in Memphis. Yes. His father.
Yeah.
So Drake has family in Memphis. And he actually was there last summer filming, maybe it was 2 summers ago. He was filming a music video at like one of these popular Memphis bars, and they gave him like a key to the city, and everybody came out to like see Drake. Yeah, they had a whole
OMG. I did not know that.
Anita, are we going to interview Drake's dad? That's hilarious.
I mean, he just came out with a country song. And so I'm like, oh, nice song. And then he followed me. So I'm like, you never know. You never know what things will lead to. Like I went to a pop-up event in the art district in LA. They were doing like the Elvis. They, you know, made it transform it into like the Jungle Room, like at Graceland. So if you can't go see Graceland, sometimes they do pop-up events. New York City, Chicago, and then it was in LA. I drove up there. I met, like we had like an Elvis hat on and it sparked conversations. And it was this guy who produced a lot of the songs that Elvis sang. He's best friends with one of the Memphis Mafia members, Jerry Schilling.
Oh, weird.
And he had like, he's hung out with Priscilla so often. And it just, these people are so willing to just talk to you. And they're excited because not everyone has this excitement and brings this energy to something that they worked on. So when they get that and they realize, oh my gosh, there's fans out there and they're so excited to talk to me, they're like an open book sometimes. So I find it very easy to reach out to people and, you know, get them talking about Elvis. That's been a highlight because if we were getting no's constantly, we probably wouldn't be here.
In a lot of ways.
It's so cool because it seems like the fandom is just like ever evolving and like the collaborators are like willing to talk with you guys. And I think like that's the same thing in the Michael fan community, like people that like choreographed certain videos and danced with Michael and did songs with Michael. They're willing to work together with fans. And I think that's so cool. So I wanted to talk about this movie because we've brought it up a couple of times. The Elvis biopic that came out in 2022 was huge. The Michael Jackson biopic is slated to come out later this year in October. So what can we prepare? Like, how can we prepare for this? Because we think, and the Michael Jackson fan community, that this is going to be huge. It's going to bring in a lot of fans. What did it do for the Elvis fan community? Kristen, I know it brought you in, right? Everybody makes fun of me because I used to say biopic, and they're like, it's biopic. I don't know. They say it's biopic.
Biopic? I don't know. Someone will tell us in the comments because they're going to be like, that girl Kristen is saying it wrong. And I'm like, I am.
Tell us in the comments, guys. Okay, but yes, the biopic,
Yeah.
what did it do for you? And tell us.
Well, yes. The reason why I'm here is because of the biopic. I've been a fan of music my whole life. We never listened to Elvis for some reason or other. Not that we weren't fans of him. It's just like we were always listening to like said this before, like Creedence Clearwater. Like my dad liked different types of like rock and roll. But I even talk to him now because he knows that like I'm very involved in the Elvis community now, and he's like, I liked Elvis. I didn't play him like on the regular for some reason. Like it wasn't like a no, we don't like him, you know? But the biopic was such a like eye opener to a whole new younger generation of fans for Elvis that I think just like is bringing some new life to the community. Like there are, as Benita said, like the OGs, there's fans that are still around that are still part of like Facebook communities or like, we'll see them at the events. But now you have like Gen Z, you have even like Gen Alpha people. Like one of our girlfriends was with us in January in Memphis, and like she is our age, like in her 30s, and then she actually brought her daughter. So her daughter now is part of the community, and like she is 11, and like out there talking about Elvis on her Instagram. And so like the movie like brought just Elvis to a whole new generation and like made it feel like a little bit more modern. And like we're here talking about it because like I know Benita and I were inspired to be, we wanted to create content for Elvis. Like he inspired us to do this now, not like 10 years ago. Like we're here now for a reason. And the movie really brought in so many new fans for Elvis. And like I think Graceland had like record numbers, people coming to visit. And so I don't know, I think the OG fans had to grapple a little bit like with what to do with all the new fans, just because people have very strong opinions about Elvis. And like when Elvis changed, like he touched our lives so much. Like everyone is so passionate about Elvis and talking about Elvis and how Elvis has like inspired you. And so I think initially like people were like butting heads a little bit. Like, how do we like, that's not what I think. That's what, and I think now like everyone's like, oh my gosh, we love the newer fans. We love the younger generation. Like Elvis is back in the like media. Look at all this new stuff coming out about him. Like now that didn't happen before. And so I think we've like reached a really good place in the fandom with like older fans respecting the newer fans. And we talk about this on our podcast. Like we spend so much of our life, like we both have full-time jobs, families, like we do this on our free time. And like you found us, we put so much effort into like putting content out there to making sure like we're doing right by Elvis that I think we've hit a good point where like the OG fans, they respect the new fans now because of just all the time and effort it takes to do this, So
The movie reignited just a lot of passion, like in myself. It reminded me when I used to watch his movies and listen to his music, but it also the way that Austin Butler portrayed the struggles and then this larger than life personality. And it just really made his story feel relevant again. And Elvis's influence. So I could literally talk to you about anything and maybe find a way to reconnect it back to Elvis. And I'll give you an example.
it's true.
Yesterday, the Super Bowl was in New Orleans. And where did King Creole get filmed?
New
That was one of
Orleans
them in New Orleans, in Louisiana. So it's just like everywhere you look, because Elvis, I think, was a big proponent in shaping, entertainment. He was one of the first people that did that, the timing and but he just came from such a like humble beginnings. He was religious. He was all about his family, like his mom, and he bought all of his family like houses, and was just giving. And the relationship aspect of it, there's a big controversy, like, oh, was it Priscilla was this age when he was this age, and whole him dancing a certain way was just blowing people's minds at that time, and like people were protesting against it, and it's just so fascinating. So I was instantly drawn back in to just find out all the information I could, and the more information I discovered, I'm like blown away, and I'm like, I want to find out more and more and more, and just keep feeding that hunger. And I feel like with the Michael Jackson, is it biopic? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. But I really hope that whoever is directing, like the casting, that is also crucial, because with this Elvis movie, those are all just so important. He took the time to, the outfits, the scenery, the way that Austin looked into the camera. That was one reason why they hired him to, star as Elvis, because he looked in the camera a certain way that kind of evokes like emotions from you. And I hope they do that with
Me too.
Michael Jackson's, because Selena, she had one that came out like a biopic on Netflix, and I just wasn't sold on it. I don't feel like the person that they used this gave her justice, because what is so important about Michael Jackson and Elvis is that they're human characteristics, like how they make you feel when they talk to you. It could be just like the Southern draw that Elvis has, like the little look that he gives you. And if you can't portray that in a movie, then you're not really selling the idea. And so I just hope, I hope they do good.
I hope they do. Well, isn't it Michael's nephew is going to be? Yes.
It's Jafar Jackson, which is Michael's nephew. And I think
he's already going to be emotional. Like,
he sounds a lot like Michael. He sounds a lot like Michael, and he also is like a performer. So he's done like some of his own music, and he's also supposedly a great dancer. Like, people have said from the set, because I think they've almost finished with production. They've said like, oh, Jafar he's great. Like, he really embodies Michael. Even like past collaborators with Michael have said like Jafar did great. So I'm hopeful, and I'm glad to hear that you both say that it kind of made you more curious and like want to look into more information, because I think that's the thing. I think a lot of the MJ fans are worried about, how are you going to portray Michael Jackson's life in 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is?
I know.
They're not going to be able to do it all, but we hope that it will inspire people to look deeper, right?
Right. And based on the angle too. Because it's not just the way that, you tell the life story. So Baz actually had the angle of Colonel Tom Parker. He was kind of the villain in this story, which then by default, you are cheering for Elvis, and kind of like that self-destruction was kind of the root of Colonel Tom Parker taking advantage of this family and just making him work, even when he tried to get away, and he would give him drugs to like, you have to be on that stage no matter what. And so that angle was very powerful.
And Aisha, I guess I would say for you, like as an more of like an OG fan, welcome the new fans with open arms, because like as Benita was saying, like that the way they portrayed the Colonel wasn't completely accurate, right? So the new fans wouldn't know that. You have to like go do the research, and there was part villain to his story, but like if you know about the history of like who he was, and like there might not be an Elvis without the Colonel, so you have to like go do that research. So, and if it wasn't for some of the older fans being like, well, actually read this article, like you're not going to know everything at once. You come into this fandom like just from that movie. So I would just say welcome them with open arms and have an open mind, as like, don't worry, I'm here to teach you, and like I will show you the way. You know what I mean? Because people did that for us, and now we are doing that for other people. So and I think that was helpful, because like Benita said, like there's different angles you can take, and it's important to know the truth, and that is like where you can come in. So
I love
that. You guys will, yeah.
You're giving me all the good vibes. I'm excited about the biopic. And I just want to thank you both for coming on today. Like, this has been such a cool conversation. I hope the Michael Jackson fans listening take away some information about Elvis and the Elvis fan community, and like the commonalities between the two. Go to Graceland and take me with you, because I want to go. Maybe we can meet up with those Elvis girls. It seems like such a cool and fun place to visit, and just like so nostalgic, and like part of music history. If you want to learn more about Elvis, make sure that you are visiting those Elvis girls. Where can they find you online?
We are on Facebook at those Elvis girls. We are on Instagram at those.elvis.girls, and you can find us on YouTube, those Elvis girls. So we'll send you the links, and you can put them in the description for people. But thank you so much. This has been so much fun to just meet you and speak with you and talk about fandoms, because so relevant to both of us, all three of us. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope everyone will check out their show. Make sure that if you're listening to this on Spotify or your Apple Podcasts or whatever, make sure you leave us a 5-star review because that always helps to
Yeah.
boost the show. And like the video and visit them on their YouTube channel and make sure you give them a subscribe and a like and a thumbs up and all that because they are really out here teaching all of us about Elvis. I can't wait to guys' next video. And until next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.